Hi, thank you for joining us for another exciting episode of History Talk. This is Season 1, Episode 2. I told you guys it'd probably be in 2 weeks. Today's episode, we will be focusing on the Brotherhood of Steel, continuing on our Fallout universe versus real history, comparing and analyzing different fractions in the Fallout universe with actual history. Over there. And this Fallout, this episode, will focus mainly on the Fallout fraction of the Brotherhood in Fallout 4. Because I want to do a different story on New Vegas, Fallout Brotherhood, and I want to do a different story on the Capital Wasteland. Now, when I first thought about doing an episode about the Brotherhood of Steel and comparing it to real history, I originally wanted to compare it to the Crusades and how the collecting of antiquities and the reclaiming of the Commonwealth was relevant to that. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, that just doesn't seem right. So, a few nights ago, I had started a new playthrough for Fallout 4, and I had watched one of my favorite Vietnam documentaries. So when I came to this realization as soon as I saw the Prydwen appearing over the mountain range, I decided to follow it down into the Commonwealth instead of just fast traveling to Diamond City. I'm not going to spoil alert you this time. And I noticed that the vertibirds were attacking every hostile that came into contact, and that immediately made me think of Operation Rolling Thunder. For those of you who are not familiar with the history of the Vietnam War, the Operation Rolling Thunder was the utilization of our air superiority to attack certain strategic points in northern Vietnam. And it was a very controversial strategy, and if you do recall, if you had followed the career of John McCain, he was shot down over North Vietnam participating in Operation Rolling Thunder, sorry. And he was a POW for almost a year, 2 years? I don't know. And that immediately got me thinking about how the Brotherhood is sort of like our involvement in Vietnam. This is going to be a very exciting, possibly short video. One of the other comparisons I could find was that the utilization of air superiority. Now, those of you who have studied Vietnam in school or have had family members who served during Vietnam will know that they used their air superiority for everything. Operation Roaring Thunder, bombing raids, and stuff like that. Not only that, but they used helicopters to transport troops to and from battle, to transport equipment, and all sorts of stuff. The Vietnamese did not have the adequate air support to do some of that operations. Certainly the North Vietnamese. South Vietnamese, the only reason they had helicopters and some jets was because the United States basically gave it to them. And I see that in the Fallout universe, where the Brotherhood wastes no time in utilizing their obvious air superiority They use their vertibirds for everything. They use them for combat. They use them to drop troops into areas. They use them to patrol. And the Institute and the Minutemen and the Railroad, they don't have that. I want to compare the Institute with the Communist North and how they were basically an underground situation that the Brotherhood felt very threatened by. The reason we got involved in Vietnam was because the North Vietnamese and the South Vietnamese were in the middle of a civil war that South Vietnam was on the verge of losing. And the United States didn't want that because South Vietnam was technically democratic. So they got involved, and that's why. The reason the Brotherhood are getting involved in the Commonwealth is because the Institute is messing around with technology that would pose an immediate threat to the human race, cause another cataclysmic event, such as the Great War in 2077. And that's another similarity I see. Another similarity is there's really no ground being taken in either conflict. Now, I want you to understand what I mean by that. There's no real tangible evidence that the Brotherhood of Steel are succeeding. Just like there's no real tangible evidence that the Americans in Vietnam were succeeding. The Brotherhood of Steel's operational quota was basically the same as America's in Vietnam. Destroy or delay the Institute, destroy or delay the communists, the gathering of technologies. The only difference in that is in Vietnam, we destroyed the technologies, and the Brotherhood of Steel categorized it and kept it. I want you to understand, in Vietnam, we had this policy in place called, well, more like strategy, that the whole idea was to cripple the Viet Cong, which were being supplied by North Vietnam, which were causing heavy damage to the South and helping and assisting the South in losing the war. Sabotaging, attacking, terrorist acts. There were some reports of assassination attempts, yada, 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 people being people. Anyway, the strategy of the Americans was to take these supply areas, which were being brought down through Laos and Cambodia via the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and destroy them. It was an operational procedure called search and destroy, which is basically what we did all the time in Vietnam. We did jungle patrols just to suss out where the enemy was and where their stockpiles were. Because the way we thought, the way we figured it, is that if we destroyed the stockpiles, we could at least disrupt the enemy long enough for the South to start winning the war. We could completely cripple the ability of the Viet Cong to assist in the war. And that's the same thing with the Brotherhood of Steel. I mean, they get you, the protagonist, to search out these stockpiles of technical documents, historical documents, what have you, and laser weapons and stuff. I didn't do much of that, actually. But it's something they do. It's something they do down across the whole Fallout spectrum. The other thing I saw was that they don't destroy them, but they categorize them again. That was the main difference between search and destroy, search and retrieve. Search and destroy being with the Americans in Vietnam, Search and Retrieve being with the Brotherhood of Steel and Fallout. Any Fallout, basically. Anyway, you see no real ground being taken at all. Yes, they have supreme dominance over the air. The Institute does not have vertibirds. The Minutemen does not have vertibirds. The Railroad does not have vertibirds. I can't stress that enough because it's such a defining feature in both the Brotherhood of Steel of Fallout 4 and the Vietnam War. Now, that's not saying the North didn't have an Air Force, didn't have some form of helicopters, didn't have some jets, but those were mainly in use and deployment around North Vietnam to combat the Americans' Operation Roaring Thunder. And as you're trampling through the Commonwealth, especially after the Brotherhood of Steel has landed in the Commonwealth, you'll randomly run into patrols of knights, paladins, scribes that are just, I don't know if better way to explain, just assessing the area. That's the same thing we did with Jungle Patrol. And they're getting ambushed and they're being attacked, just like our troops did in Vietnam. That was another similarity that I saw with that. And the casualty rate was immense. The Brotherhood honestly wanted to be in the Commonwealth, as well as America thought that they should be in Vietnam at first. The locals, in another similarity, may not want nor need or become too dependent on the presence of either the Brotherhood of Steel or the Americans in the case of Vietnam. In Vietnam, almost more than half the economy was dependent on the American military presence in black market trading alone. That's not saying just in private sector trading and the cooks or the tailors or the accountants or whatever have you. The same thing I could see happening in the Commonwealth very easily is as the Brotherhood becomes more of a noticeable. That's not something you relatively see in the game per se, but humor means saying that this would be reality and an increased presence of the Brotherhood in the Commonwealth would lead to that kind of dependency. The Minutemen, again in the last video I tell you, was one of my favorite fractions in the Fallout Nexus. Not just Fallout 4, but the Fallout in general. It used to be the Brotherhood of Steel, by the way. And I think that the Minutemen will not grow as strong, or at least not be allowed to grow as strong with a Brotherhood presence in the Commonwealth. The Brotherhood would attack super mutants, would fight them on their grounds and attack the Institute wherever they happen to emerge. The Minutemen wouldn't do that. And thus, the Minutemen would become dependent on the Brotherhood of Steel. Another thing is in trade goods and in money exchange. The Brotherhood brings in a whole new concept to the Commonwealth in means of trade and exchanging of currencies. Not saying they have printed money like the NCR in New Vegas and Fallout 2. But pretty sooner or later, the economies of Diamond City and any large settlements you may have established, like at the Starlight Drive-In or the Sunshine Co-op or Sanctuary Hills or the Warwick Homestead, is going to sort of depend on that Brotherhood presence. Because again, they're the ones going after the super mutants. They're the ones taking the fight to the Institute. Even though there's no visible evidence of their success, the people of the Commonwealth will slowly gain more dependency. Now, that's not saying everyone would be dependent on the presence of the Brotherhood. It certainly wasn't that fact in Vietnam. That's why we had the Viet Cong, resistant guerrilla fighters in South Vietnam. You see in dialogue, if you go to the Cambridge police station and exchange dialogue with Paladin Dance, I'm going to warn you about a spoiler, but it's not really a spoiler if I'm talking about dialogue, right? If you go there with Preston Garvey, technically your second in command of the Minutemen, the guy who gives you all your missions, he's a lesser officer giving his commanding general lesser missions that seem to be boring, tedious tasks. I hate you, Preston. And the dialogue he has when you talk to Preston, ask him what his thoughts are. You have that, you know what I'm talking about, when you press Y or whatever you do on PC or PlayStation, and you chat with him and you ask him what his thoughts are, and he says, of all the problems we are facing, the Brotherhood doesn't need to be one of them, I guess. It's been a while since I played that like a few days ago, and it's finals week, so my brain's not working very right. So basically there is a subgroup of people that do not want the Brotherhood there, just like there was a group of people who did not want the Americans involved in Vietnam. And that cuts both ways. I would have loved to see how the Capital Wasteland and other Brotherhood chapters thought about half their force being sent over to a place that's separated from the rest of the country basically by a giant mound of radioactive manure, aka the glowing sea. I would have loved to see that. If anyone knows of a YouTube video that shows that the possibility of what other Brotherhood chapters thought of the of Elder Maxon sending the Pridwin, one of their most advanced flying airships, certainly their most successful flying airship, into the Commonwealth, where it's harder to get reinforcements. I know that. And yeah, I just would love to see how people either on YouTube or the wiki or anything, Skynet, tell me how the other Brotherhood chapters would feel about Elder Maxon going to the Commonwealth to fight an underground enemy. And what were the other ones? There were a couple. There were a lot. Sorry, again, I just did finals. Hope I passed. Weaponry. America possibly had the most advanced weaponry and technology used in the history of modern warfare when it came to helicopters, jets, and we've already discussed that, but also in communications equipment, etc., etc. Same thing with the Brotherhood. You have the emergence of the Gatling laser gun, and they're basically, besides the Institute, our most advanced force in the Commonwealth at this time. You also have the establishment of base camps, FOBs, or for the Brotherhood of Steel, it is the Boston airport. For America, we had several bases, forward operation bases, all over Vietnam. We had Quezon is the most recognizable one. We operated out of Seoul, we operated out of Da Nang, we operated out of Hanoi. Hanoi. Can't remember. Anyway, in the Brotherhood, if you do the end game and you side with the Brotherhood, they'll completely spread out and they'll have an operational presence in Diamond City, just like it would no matter what fraction you sided with. And talked about Throwing Birds, talked about Operation Roaring Thunder, talked about Search and Retrieve versus Search and Destroy. What else is on the list? Well, I guess I could tell you why really I did this comparisons. The more I did, the more I thought about it, the more it just made sense. And the more it made sense, the more I thought about my family's personal history with the Vietnam War. My grandpa did 3 tours of duty in the air during his time in the Air Force in Vietnam. And he had passed away several years ago, and I don't know why, but thinking about this subject made me think about him a lot over the last 2 weeks. And I'm saying "and" a lot, aren't I? Yeah. I just want to dedicate this video to my grandpa, I guess. Oh, now I remember what I was going to say. The second I start talking about something completely irrelevant. If you guys ever sided with either the Institute or the Railroad or the Minutemen, you have that option to take the fight to the Brotherhood and destroy them. This is more simplistic of what Vietnam was to the Americans and what the Commonwealth was to the Brotherhood if they lost the war with the Institute, or if they got attacked by them. That image of the Prydwen going up in flames when you attack it with artillery from the castle, or when you infiltrated and sabotaged Liberty Prime to go postal and just destroy the whole place, or when you plant bombs in it when you're working with the railroad. It just symbolizes what Vietnam was to us. As you're seeing the Prydwen go up in flames, you realize that was basically America. Everyone knows that there was massive protests. The war was very unpopular. It was costing America not necessarily that much in taxes, even though it was a very expensive war, but also in human life. As far as I know, we still have MIA in Vietnam. to this day. Now, the odds of them being found alive are completely astronomically against. And you saw the emergence of the new wave movement, with the hippies and the war protesters. You saw the drastic change of America from the anti-communist, fight it on every ground we can find attitudes of the late 40s and 50s, and early 60s, to that who cares? Better red than dead was a common slogan. The peace at any price, which is really any war you look at in American, is any war you look at in human history. There are people who prefer peace over war. Everyone would prefer peace over war. Seeing the Prigman go up in flames after coming to this realization and comparing it, I saw everything that happened in America in the 60s and early 70s. I saw the protesters. I saw the soldiers coming home with more than just physical wounds. I saw my grandpa. I saw my friend's grandpa. I live in a town where there is a huge veteran population, and there are a lot of people here who served in Vietnam, and I saw all of them. The more I thought about it, and the more I went through with it, I don't know. I'm sorry that this video is shorter than the last one, but there's a little more history to it, isn't there? And if you're interested in learning more about the Vietnam War, PBS has a good documentary, and unless it's been taken off, Netflix has two good documentaries I recommend. Brothers in Arms, which is following the tours of duty of this one combat outfit that served in Vietnam. It is very powerful stuff. It actually has not college professors, not historians, not some stupid college student with a webcam on his tablet. Wait, that's me. It has the actual veterans that talk about it. It's sort of set up like Band of Brothers, only in a more documentary-like atmosphere. And if you enjoy history and you want to learn more about the Vietnam War, watch that. Another one is Last Days of Vietnam, which I'm pretty sure is no longer on Netflix. And if I could find it on anywhere else, I'll let you know. Maybe you can Google it. Last Days in Vietnam documentary. I think it's made by Discovery. It talks about the massive evacuations out of South Vietnam after the Americans had pulled out. The evacuation of the embassy. And yeah, that's some good stuff to look at. I really recommend the PBS documentary about Vietnam because they really know their stuff. It's several episodes long. It goes from when we were basically just sending attaches or consultants to aid the French during their war with the Vietnamese, the Vietnam, as they were called, during the French Indochina War. And then it goes all the way up into the evacuation of the embassy and the end of the Vietnam War. It covers a huge expanse. It actually has the veterans from both the North Vietnamese, South Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, the United States. It has all those guys doing interviews. It's just interesting to watch that. If you know of someone who had served in the Vietnam War, don't do what I do. Don't just brush it off as, oh, I can just talk to this guy tomorrow. That guy might not be there tomorrow. It's the same thing with the greatest generation, World War II generation. We're already too late to hear firsthand accounts of World War I. Don't let history just become something in a book, or something you have to sit through like an hour a day just to get a grade. Let history live. I'm doing these comparison analysis because, quite frankly, it's fascinating. It's interesting. And if there's something I left out that you think I should have added to this video, please let me know in the comments section. Now, at this point in the video, you are going to see somebody on any other YouTube channel ask you to donate to Patreon, ask you to send us money. Again, God bless all. Most of all, send your money. I don't have a Patreon. I'm doing this free. This is on my time. I'm utilizing a study hall room at my college to do this. And by the way, next episode we will be moving to another location. It won't be probably as nice as this. Hopefully I can get something at the library because the semester's over. Yay! And all I'm going to ask you to do is comment. Let me know what I did wrong. Let me know what I missed out on. Let me know if there's something that you think I should add. And let me know what you think how the next video should go. Because the next video, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to compare the railroad. The very last video for Fallout 4 will be on the Institute. Because I don't have any idea how I'm going to make that. I'm also going to ask you to like, share, and subscribe this, and click that bell notification like it's a super mutant. Click it right in the face of a laser musket. Rifle. And one last thing. You're going to hate me. Another settlement needs your help. I'll mark it on your map. Boom!